In this video, I'm going to discuss Generally Accepted Auditing Standards in the Philippines or Gaas, and we're starting right now. What's up? My name is Ron from the CPA Recipe and I'm a certified public accountant. If this is your first time in this channel and if you're looking for fun, engaging, and easy to understand tutorial videos about accounting and related topics, you've come to the right place. So start now by hitting the like button, sharing this video on your timeline, and hitting the subscribe button and bell notification icon so you won't miss anything. Now, as I've said earlier in this video, I'm going to discuss kung ano ba ang Generally Accepted Auditing Standards or GAAS, and this is gonna be Legend? Wait for it, Berry! So bro, have you ever wondered about this? Ang objective ng audit ng financial statements ay makapagbigay ang auditor ng kanyang opinyon as to the fairness of the presentation of the financial statements. Pero, paano ba natin masasabi na kapag sinabi ng auditor na fairly presented ang financial statements, fairly presented nga talaga ito? What if, nagbigay siya ng opinyon, for example, sabi niya, these financial statements are fairly presented and comply with the applicable financial reporting framework. Pero in fact, wala pala siyang sapat na expertise or experience, or wala palang basis na evidence ang kanyang opinyon. Or kung meron man, kulang pala ang evidence na nakuha niya. Or what if, affiliated pala siya sa company na inaudit niya, meaning meron pala siyang lagay. Well, kung magbibigay lang naman ng opinyon, everyone can simply give his or her own opinion. Don't you agree, bro? Pero, what makes the opinion of an auditor a reliable one? Remember, as I have mentioned during the first episode of this series na kung hindi mo pa napapanood bro, nilagay ko ang link sa description below. Ang opinion ng isang auditor ay kailangan upang magkaroon ang users of the financial statements ng reasonable assurance sa paggamit ng information na nilalaman ng mga financial statements. Bro, teka, ano ba yung reasonable assurance? Assurance meaning bro, meron kang peace of mind kasi meron kang pinanghahawakan na yung ginamit mong information from the financial statements in order to make economic decisions are fairly presented. Ano yung pinanghahawakan mo na ito bro? Ito bro, yung opinion ng external auditor. Ano naman ang ibig sabihin ng reasonable? Ibig sabihin, yung assurance na ito ay hindi absolute. Meron tayong tinatawag na room for error. So for example, kung ang opinion ni auditor ay fairly presented ang financial statements, it doesn't guarantee na ang financial statements ay 100% accurate. Now, bakit ba reasonable assurance lang ang nabibigay ng auditors at hindi absolute or 100% assurance? Now, that will be a discussion long enough to deserve a separate video. So don't forget to subscribe if hindi ka pa nagsusubscribe and hit the bell icon so you won't miss out on our new uploads every week. So sabi natin ang auditor ay nagbibigay ng reasonable assurance. Pero let me ask you bro, ikaw for instance na magre-rely sa opinion ng auditor, what will give you that kind of confidence, that comfort or trust na reliable or kapanipaniwala ang opinion na ibibigay ng isang auditor? Dito bro papasok ang Generally Accepted Auditing Standards. Ang Generally Accepted Auditing Standards ang minimum requirements para masabi natin na yung pag-audit na ginawa ng isang auditor ay may quality. Dahil maraming magre-rely sa magiging opinion ng isang auditor at malaki ang magiging impact nito if ever man na makapag-issue ng maling opinion ng isang auditor, which is not impossible bro. Pwedeng mangyari na magkamali ang auditor sa opinion na binigay niya. Dahil sabi ko nga kanina, reasonable assurance lamang ang nabibigay ng isang auditor at hindi absolute. At masasabi nating reasonable assurance ang nabibigay ng isang auditor kapag siya ay nag-perform ng audit at na-meet niya ang minimum standards or requirements as stated in the Generally Accepted Auditing Standards sa pag-perform niya ng kanyang audit. Ang Generally Accepted Auditing Standards ang magiging basis natin kung nagkaroon ba ng pagkukulang ang auditor sa kanyang trabaho. Na-meet ba niya ang minimum standards na expected sa kanya? or kung nagawa ba niya ang lahat ng kanyang makakaya para makapagbigay ng tamang opinyon regarding the fairness of the presentation of the financial statements. So now bro, ano ba ang nilalaman ng tinatawag nating Gaas? The Gaas contains 10 requirements which are divided into 3 major groups, namely, the general standards, which states the characteristics required from an auditor, the standards of field work, which states the minimum requirements in the performance of audit procedures, and lastly, the standards of reporting, which states the basic requirements as to the contents of the auditor's report. Now, let's discuss one by one. Let's begin with general standards. These are the standards pertaining to the characteristics of the person performing audit services. Meaning bro, characteristics na dapat meron ang isang auditor. The first standard requires an auditor to have adequate technical training and proficiency. Very self-explanatory bro. If users of the financial statements are to rely upon the opinion given by someone, that someone should have formal education in accounting and auditing, adequate practical experience and training, and of course, continuing professional education. Malamang bro, kung ang isang tao ay magbibigay ng opinion tungkol sa isang bagay, naturally, dapat expert siya sa area na yon. Otherwise, walang credibility ang kanyang opinion. At dahil we're talking about the financial statements here, dapat ang auditor rin ay proficient sa accounting. This is why a person performing an audit of the financial statements ay dapat isang certified public accountant. The second standard requires an auditor to have independence in mental attitude. Ibig sabihin lang nito bro, ang isang auditor ay dapat walang bias or walang kinikilingan. Nakakamit ito ng auditor kapag siya ay free of the circumstances kung saan maaaring magkaroon ng tinatawag natin na conflict of interest. Dahil nagbibigay ang auditor ng assurance sa users of the financial statements at sa mga parties na magre-rely sa kanyang opinyon, dapat ang opinyon na ito ay expressed based on evidence lamang at walang pinapanigan na side. Kung ano ba ang mga situations kung saan maaaring magkaroon ng conflict of interest ang isang auditor, that will be discussed on a separate video. So bro, alam mo na, don't forget to hit subscribe, alright? Now, the third standard requires an auditor to practice due professional care. Simple lang ang sinasabi ng standard na ito bro. Due professional care or ibig sabihin, pag-iingat or karampatang pag-iingat bilang isang professional sa lahat ng aspeto ng pag-audit. Ibig sabihin, the standards require an auditor to be careful or diligent. Kung hindi mo ba rin gets bro, ibig sabihin nito in the simplest words, an auditor is expected to perform the audit procedures thoroughly. Meaning bro, hindi bara-bara or hindi madalian na parang bahala na si Batman. Ang auditor dapat ay hindi negligent or pabaya sa kanyang conduct of the audit engagement. So for instance, sa pagkuha ng evidence to test the assertions, sa paggawa ng audit procedures, sa pag-evaluate kung anong klase ba ng opinion ang ibibigay niya, an auditor should have a questioning mind or attitude or yung tinatawag natin na professional skepticism. Meaning, hindi overconfident or kampante ang auditor. Now, let's move to the next grouping or the standards of fieldwork. The first standard of fieldwork requires adequate planning and supervision in the conduct of the audit. Bakit kailangan magplano bro? Well, simple lang. The bottom line of planning an audit is to ensure that an audit will be performed in an efficient and effective manner. Efficient meaning minimal ang waste of resources. Ibig sabihin bro, the resources are utilized well. Effective naman meaning bro, you will be able to meet the objective in performing the audit. Ano yung objective na yun na sinasabi natin? That is to be able to express an opinion as to the fairness of the financial statements. Now, planning ensures that an audit will be efficient and effective because by planning bro, malalaman mo kung ano ba ang itetest mo sa audit. You can identify your priorities and set your scope kung alin bang areas, processes or accounts sa financial statements ang may higher risk of being materially misstated. Sa cash ba? Sa receivables? Sa property, plant and equipment? Sa revenues? Also, you can identify from the beginning pa lang what could potentially go wrong, and from that, you can already set action plans para ma-counter mo ang mga potential problems along the way. By planning the audit, you can already identify kung ano ba ang dapat na gawin ng mga procedures and you can also determine their nature, timing, and extent. At dahil planado mo ang audit procedures mo bro, nakalatag yan sa audit program. Makikita mo agad kung alin na ba yung mga task na nagawa mo na, alin yung hindi mo pa nagagawa, at alin yung mga ongoing pa lang. In short, it can help you monitor the engagement and track hanggang sa ma-meet ng audit team ang objectives. Also, planning and engagement assists an auditor in proper assignment and coordination of work. Ilang manpower ba ang kailangan? Sinong staff ba ang i-assign sa mga accounts? Anong experience or proficiency level ba ang kakailanganin? Ano-anong resources ba ang kailangan gamitin? Gaano katagal ba or ilang man-hours ang kailangan para sa audit? In real life bro, this is documented doon sa tinatawag nating audit plan at audit program. Now, the standard also requires adequate supervision. Now, bakit naman ito kailangan? Of course, it's not enough na may plano ka bro. Possible na along the way magkaroon ng mga deviation sa plan. Planning, after all, is not a discrete process but rather, it is subject to changes as the audit progresses. Supervision naman is required in order to ensure that the engagement team members are performing according to plan and thus working towards the achievement of the audit objective. Especially sometimes, hindi naman lahat ng members of the team ay experienced. So naturally, the more experienced members of the team as well as the higher members of the team should guide and supervise the less experienced ones in order to ensure that the objectives of the audit will be met and it will be performed with quality. Now, the second standard of fieldwork requires that the auditor understand the entity and its environment, including internal control. Anong ibig sabihin nito bro? Dapat ang isang auditor na iintindihan niya ang nature of business ng kumpanya na ino-audit niya. Bakit niya yan kailangan maintindihan bro? Para ma-identify mo bro at maintindihan mo yung events, transactions, and practices na potentially may significant effects sa financial statements. For instance, if you're auditing a telecommunications company, kailangan mong maintindihan kung ano ba ang revenue sources nito. Minsan bro, for instance, kapag nag-vouch ka ng transactions, may cases na ang ibibigay na supporting document sa'yo ay kontrata na merong complicated terms. Now, if hindi mo naiintindihan ang nature of business ng isang entity, paano mo i-assess ang applicable revenue recognition kung hindi mo nga naiintindihan ang business model? Another example, paano ginagamit ang property, plant, and equipment ng business? Kapag hindi mo ito naiintindihan bro, paano mo i-assess kung appropriate pa yung depreciation method ng ginagamit ng business? Nagets mo ba bro? Bro, how about yung environment? Bakit kailangan mo rin yun intindihin? For example bro, baka kasi may certain laws and regulations na may requirement in terms of financial reporting. Baka may applicable laws na nagre-require ng certain disclosures sa financial statements and of course, you have to include that in your scope. Moreover, kailangan mo rin ng understanding ng environment ng entity dahil naaapektuhan nito ang business ng kumpanyang ino-audit mo. For instance, maaari kang makakuha ng information from the environment of the entity na maaaring makapagbigay sa'yo ng information na pwedeng mag-indicate na hindi na pala going concern ng isang entity. Another example bro, pwedeng mayroong intangible assets ang isang entity at dahil inaral mo ang environment ng entity, nalaman mo na impaired na pala ang value ng intangible asset dahil outdated na ang patented product gawa ng technological advances. Another example, pwede mong magamit ang understanding ng entity's environment for some estimates na ginagamit sa pag-prepare ng financial statements. Now, the bottom line is that an auditor needs to understand the environment of an entity in order to have information to be used in the audit because its environment also have an impact to the business of the entity which in turn may also have a significant impact as to the fairness of the presentation of the financial statements. Now, we will discuss more of this in a separate video. Lastly bro, the auditor should have an understanding of the audit client's internal control in order to be able to plan the audit and develop an efficient and effective audit approach. Lalo na sa part ng efficiency which in the interest of time, we're going to discuss in a separate video dahil consideration of internal controls can reduce the extent of substantive audit procedures. Now, The third standard of fieldwork requires the auditor to obtain sufficient, competent, evidential matter in order to have a reasonable basis in forming an opinion regarding the financial statements under examination. Ibig sabihin lang nito bro, dapat may basis ang magiging opinion ng isang auditor. Ang basis na ito ay yung mga evidence na makukuha ng auditor by performing audit procedures. Ano ba itong audit procedures na sinasabi natin? Meron tayong 4 na common procedures. Nandyan yung inspection, usually ginagawa ito sa mga source documents. Another procedure is observation. So for instance, ang auditor pwede yan pumunta sa warehouse. Kunwari gusto mo makita yung actual existence ng assets na nasa balance sheet. Now, another procedure yung tinatawag natin na inquiries, no? So kasama dito yung mga meetings mo with the audit client's employees or maybe yung mga inquiries mo with experts. Lastly, meron tayong tinatawag na confirmation. So, example naman nito, yung bank confirmation letters. For instance, pwede tayo mag-send ng letter sa bank to confirm yung cash balance ng audit client, no? Now, ang bottom line lang bro is that dapat may basihan ang magiging opinion ng auditor which is called the audit evidence or evidential matter. So now, let's move on to the last grouping of Gaas which is the standards of reporting. For this one naman bro, these 4 standards merely states things which should be contained in the auditor's report. Before we begin, kindly read on your own the 4 standards of reporting which I will now flash on the screen. Now, to begin, I'm going to show you a sample auditor's report. What you're seeing now is the opinion section of a sample independent auditor's report for the audit of the CPA Recipes financial statements. As you can see in the second paragraph, yung phrase na in accordance with the Philippine Financial Reporting Standards, yan yung unang standard of reporting ng Gaas, which requires that the report shall state whether the financial statements are presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Ibig sabihin, kung ano ba yung financial reporting framework na ginamit na criteria in evaluating the financial statements. Dapat nakalagay yan explicitly sa audit report bro. Now, pansinin mo naman bro yung opening ng second paragraph. Yan naman yung pag-e-express ng auditor ng kanyang opinion sa financial statements which is the 4th standard of reporting. Now, kung babalikan natin yung 4th standard of reporting kanina, mapapansin mo may iba pa siyang sinasabi. Yan naman bro, makikita mo naman ang mga yan kapag ibang klase ng opinion ang i-express ng auditor. Ito kasing nasa sample ko ay unqualified opinion. Meaning, ito yung opinion na binibigay ng auditor kapag ang financial statements ay prepared in accordance with the applicable financial reporting framework. Now, etong sinasabi sa Gaas na assertion to the effect that an opinion cannot be expressed, makikita mo yan kapag ang type of report na i-issue ng auditor ay disclaimer, which in effect, hindi siya makapagbigay ng opinion due to certain circumstances na madidiscuss natin sa ibang video. So, don't forget to subscribe bro ha, para wala kang ma-miss na video. So, ang bottom line bro is that the 4th standard of reporting requires the auditor to clearly state his opinion and the basis of his opinion. Now, punta naman tayo sa 2nd standard of reporting ng Gaas. Ang ibig sabihin lang nito bro, dapat ilagay ng auditor sa kanyang report yung accounting principles na hindi observed consistently by the client. For instance bro, possible kasi na last year ang gamit ng audit client in accounting for its property, plant, and equipment ay cost model pero this year, nag-change sila into revaluation model. Now, the 2nd standard of reporting of Gaas requires that yung changes na ganito, dapat yan nakalagay yan sa audit report. Although fairly stated ang financial statements kasi for this year, possible kasi na yung significant changes in accounting principles used na ganito, may impact yan sa gagamit ng financial statements at ng report. Now bro, kung wala naman, edi no need to add anything. Now, for the 3rd standard of reporting, ang sinasabi lang naman dito bro is yung disclosures or yung notes to the financial statements. Ia-assume yan as adequate unless specifically i-express sa auditor's report na hindi siya adequate. In short, dapat ilagay ni auditor ang inadequacy sa disclosures kung meron man. Now bro, kung mapapansin mo, the generally accepted auditing standards were written in broad statements. Sa point of view ng isang practitioner, hindi masyadong malinaw kung paano ba ipuput into effect ang 10 requirements na ito. This is why we have what we call the Philippine Standards on Auditing or yung PSA, which clarifies and expands further on the minimum requirements that should be observed by an auditor in the performance of an audit. Now, sa mga future videos in this playlist, we will be discussing kung ano ba yung specific na nilalaman ng bawat Philippine Standards on Auditing na ito. And that's it for this video, bro. I hope marami kang natutunan. If you learned and liked what you saw, please don't forget to hit the thumbs up button, share this video to your timeline, and hit the subscribe button and bell notification icon para lagi kang updated pag may bago akong video. Also, if you have feedback, questions, or suggestions, feel free to comment down below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Again, my name is Ron, Certified Public Accountant, and see you in another episode for Legend. Wait for it, Derry.